we're gonna start with some yin, and it's gonna be a little kind of 50-50 on the yin flow. So we'll do a big setup of yin. So the first pose I have for Halloween renamed Tombstone Pose. And you can do the legs in any way you want. I'm going to do a butterfly with my legs. So for that reason, I am getting a blanket ready. So I'm going to take this blanket and roll it up so that I have a little extra support under my legs. And then I'm going to make a slope like my, like an old graveyard where the tombstones kind of start to fall over. Now, if you don't have any props to make this happen, you could, some tombstones just lay on the ground. You could just lay on the ground and still call it tombstone pose. So what I've got going on here is I've got a yoga block for the bottom. I've got another 4-inch height, and then I've got another yoga block up a little higher, so that's the 6-inch. And then I'm leaning a pillow against that, so I have something to lay back into. So I might get accidentally accosted by ferrets while we're at this also. But anyway, this is the setup. So I'm gonna lie down in this. I just got to make sure that the mics are muted because I hear sounds out there. So we'll mute them so the camera doesn't jump around. Come over here. Come over here. There you are. All right, now we're good. Okay, so once you've got your props organized, then you just organize you. And you can, I'm gonna do this butterfly shape like I said, but you could do straight legs if that suits you better. And the reason for the extra elevation, besides the fact that I think it's kind of more in keeping with my Halloween theme, not just for that reason, but also there's a little bit of a drop off. So the release in the shoulders for me in this pose is more extreme than when I do this without the elevation, because my elbows rest on the floor. So right now, my left elbow is almost to the ground, my right elbow is not on the ground. So as we hang out here, usually what happens is they sort of descend down as the tissue here in the front of my shoulder lets go. So we'll stay for about 3 minutes or so here. I'm just breathing and letting everything settle. One of the things I like about the yin portion of the yoga practice is that we can really, it just gives me time to focus on my breath and focus on getting centered and being present. Explored by some of the tiny people. That last minute. time period, but my right elbow is just about on the ground. My left elbow has already reached the floor. A little bit more resistant on the right side there. So just a few more breaths here. Just letting go a little tiny bit more consciously. So with the exhale, you can start to shift the pose. So I'm just going to start with my knees together. And then I'm going to kind of slowly drift myself out of here. So eventually I'm going to roll to the side and take the stuff out from underneath my back. But first it feels kind of nice to stretch with it there. And then we're going to do what is generally called a banana pose. But, you know, bananas might be sort of Halloween-y. If not, you could call it a crescent moon pose if you wanted to, because it's the same thing as the crescent moon when you're standing up. It's just that we're going to do it lying down. So first, you can kind of do this mummy pose, and kind of rock on that upper back. With or without the groans. They're sort of involuntary, but you know, in keeping with my Halloween theme. And then eventually you stretch yourself out. So I might have to move that block one more time. Okay. And then just, you know, turn yourself into a crescent. So you're just going to bend to the side. Now you can leave the arms extended overhead. You can bend at the elbow. You can do all kinds of different shapes. Like I might bend at the inside elbow and leave the outside arm a little more straight. You can grab the wrist if you like. You can overlap one leg over the other, so the outer curved leg goes over the inner curved leg there at the ankle if you like. And you can also, if your knees are a little, you know, maybe a little bit of support would be nice, you can put a little blanket under the knees. I often like that. And then we're just going to let ourselves get heavy and breathe, and we'll stay here for a few minutes. Stay for about another like 30 seconds or so, about 5 deep breaths. It'll be a little more than 30 seconds, probably. Our little crescent moon. So tonight's a full moon and a blue moon because it's the second full moon in a month. So that's kind of exciting. Okay, nice big breath. Go with a sigh. And then just inhale. Bring yourself back to the center. Oh, I think I have a visitor. All right, so then you can take a moment, sort of just pause in the middle. I'm gonna do these little windshield wipers with my legs. Oh. Just to rinse out. I like to rinse out a little bit in between sides, just in case there's any little pressure that develops right around the sacrum. The lumbar spine has this muscle called quadratus lumborum, which connects kind of from the rib cage down to the hips, but there's connective tissue of it that goes up in between the vertebrae, especially kind of acts as a stabilizer between the L4, L5, S1 joints of the spine. So it doesn't have a direct muscle connection to the sacrum, but it has lots of connective tissue fibers and can sometimes act as a stabilizer. So when we do these things where we're stretching one side, that kind of lower back between the rib and the hip, close to the spine, that's the area that I'm talking about. For me, sometimes that it can get, it's very sensitive. How's that? And so giving a little bit of movement to that area is helpful. And that's just, just the windshield wipers do just enough movement for me. But if you want, you can bring your knees into your chest and do a nice back massage that way. Hello, tiny wheeze. All right, so we're stretching out nice and long, and then I'm gonna curve myself the opposite direction now that I've given myself a little bit of time. Whoops, hold on. Let her go by. Oh, maybe she's not gonna go by. Go on. There we go. All right, so then we'll stay here for a few minutes. Scoot this way a little bit because there's a pumpkin in my way. All right. Oh. I'll just try to get kind of heavy and relax into the floor. Okay, so we're going to take a nice 2 deep breaths here. sigh. And then nice big inhale. And come on back to the center and just check it out. See you feel a little more even than we did last time. Right, so we're going to come up to all fours and we'll do some cat poses, and then we'll do a little bit more. We'll do a little bit more yin, and then we'll transition into more flow. So I'm going to take a moment to kind of lay on my side, and then I'll get myself up to all fours. Oh. So there's kind of a transition zone. Jump to tiny bees. Okay, so give yourself a little movement in your spine that feels good. And when you're ready, you can transition into a sphinx. So bring it, I like my elbows a little bit forward of the shoulder, and slightly more narrow. And then the knot out of my hair so I can concentrate on what I'm saying. And then you can stay here. You can come up onto the hands for a seal if you like, or you can go down into a crocodile, kind of let your forehead or your chin rest on your arms. So they're all back bends. There's just different layers of back bend, different amounts of pressure on the lumbar. Just choose an amount that's appropriate for you. Kind of in between, you can take a pillow or your rolled up blanket if you have one of those, and put that under your elbows. So like a crocodile becomes a little more elevated that way. So if you want something kind of a little bit more but not quite all the way to sphinx, or a little bit more but not quite all the way to seal, that would be a way to do it. Now with a yin, I try to relax my legs. When I do the sphinx in a more yang style, then I energize and kind of press the tops of my feet into the floor, lengthen out through the legs. But in this case, I'm trying to keep it as relaxed as possible. It also, you know, there's a little bit of lumbar compression, a little compression in that lower back area. So I'm just monitoring that, making sure it's not too much as I stay and breathe and try to relax into it. Stay here for just another minute. About 3 more breaths. Okay, so then I'm going to let myself kind of come out of here. And before I transition back into the last yin pose that we're going to do, I'm gonna make these little spider legs with my arms, and if you are particularly triggered by the notion of spiders, make them lizard legs, whatever like will work for you. Newt legs, maybe. So I just look for a positioning that gives me kind of the best sense of movement in my upper back. And then we're going to lift and kind of hold a cobra and roll the shoulders back and forth in this kind of creepy, spidery way, lizardy, whichever one, way. And then, we'll take it back. So we're going to come into a frog pose. Now the frog is a really extreme, extremely wide leg child's pose at the first level of first variation, which is sometimes referred to as tadpole in some of the yin books. And so the toes point in, but the knees are super wide. And then the regular version of the frog, you kind of point your flippers out to the side. And if that bothers your knees, don't do that. Just either do the tadpole or do somewhere in between. And then you sort of back the hips up. Now we're going to hang with this pose for about 3 minutes. So you can put it, like, you can use a pillow or anything to kind of give yourself some something to land on if you want to get off your elbows. You can certainly do that. And so for me, this is kind of, it targets the inner thigh area, a little groin, but it's also a little bit of a back bend, so there's some of that. So it's an interesting pose. One of the things that I find really interesting about frog pose is that time slows down while you hold it. So 3 minutes seems a lot longer. We're just going to do our best, yogis. Try to relax any tension that you might be carrying around your face or your jaw. So we're going to take 3 more deep breaths. All right, so to come out of here, you can bring the weight forward, and some people just slither right onto the belly. I like to bring one knee in at a time. So I kind of engage the muscle there in the inner thigh to make that happen. Sometimes downward dog feels really good after this pose. It seems kind of counterintuitive, but it can. The other option would be what I think I'm gonna do, which is to lie down and cry soft with yourself for a moment. Just let everything release. Oh, it can be kind of an intense pose. Hi, sweetie. Oh. So the next thing that we will do is get ourselves onto our feet. Now, you can transition that way any way you want. So you could do a squatting pose, kind of take yourself to a squat and transition that way. I'm going to do some downward dog, although my mat is still a little, oh wait, I have a spray bottle, hold on. My mat's a little bit dry, so it makes it slippery. Oh. So once it's sticky, I can take a downward dog shape and be a little bit more secure. So just take yourself through whatever pose is appropriate for you. Oh, and we'll wind up in a standing pose together. Oh. Oh. It smells interesting, doesn't it? Okay. All right, yogis. Now that I've made my mat a little more sticky, we're going to find a way to a mountain pose. Now, I'm going to show you this pose from the front first, and then I'll turn back in this direction for us to do our flow. But we're gonna do this kind of moving variation. So it's almost like we're gonna come into chair pose, except we're gonna kind of pick up the imaginary ends of a vampire cape and lift up onto the tiptoes as you get all the way to the top. My idea of this is that I'm not gonna stagger forward, but that instead I'm gonna try to stay up on my tiptoes as far as I can. And then as I get down toward this forward bend, put the heels down, and then again lifting onto the tiptoes as we come up, right on. So in my mind, I have a very long, furly cape from which to lift. So we'll see how it goes. So we're gonna take a moment, it's sort of like a chair pose, gather ourselves in, lift up onto the tiptoes, picking up your vampire cape. And then hold yourself as steady as you can up on your toes, right to the point where it kind of turns back into that chair shape. And put the heels down, come back up, lift onto the toes, and then we're going to fold it down. And then one more time, coming all the way up. Lift up, and staying on the toes as long as we can, and then folding. Now, we're going to pick up the right leg and kind of bring it up and then back into a warrior 3, which you could extend out some wings for. So if you wanted to soar a bit, you can do that. And then we're going to take that warrior 3 down to a warrior 1 shape. Now, the warrior 1, normally we're going to face forward, but we're going to do some forward and some diagonal moves in my Halloween envisioning here. So the first part of this is that we're going to bring the arms up, bring them back, kind of squish the shoulder blades together, push them forward, and then we're going to fold kind of to the diagonal, put your claws out, lean in, and do kind of like a little werewolf. And then we're going to come all the way back up. So arms up, back, push forward, fold. So we've got some little claws out. This is easier for me with blocks because I can get that kind of upward dog shape a little easier. But just coming into that swoopiness. And then swirl it around, throw in some blocks next time so it's easier to see. Coming all the way up. Elbows come back and push forward, and then folding in, planting, lifting up, and then we come back and bring it around. Now, stepping forward, bringing ourselves back to our little vampire cape. Picking it up and coming back down and picking it up and coming back down. One more time, picking it up onto the tiptoes if we can. And then as we come down, we're just gonna fold and then bring ourselves into that warrior three. Maybe the arms extend out. Maybe your plants are in the way, so you don't do that part. Oh, now I've got myself all wobbly. All right, reach it on back. Hold it steady, one more breath. And then we're gonna step back. Oh, goodness. Find that warrior one shape. Okay. So the arms are gonna come up, bring them back, push forward, fold, and then kind of creating, to the degree possible, a little bit of a back bend. Folding it over, bringing it back. Elbows come back, push forward, open out wide. Werewolf. Coming back. My howls sound so much better in a big, echoey yoga room. Here at home, they get lost in the soft furnishings, but I'm doing my best, y'all. So one more. And then we're gonna fold it back together. Bring it around. And bring it back up to the top. And taking a moment to just feel that mountain pose we just landed ourselves in. And so also, you know, kind of one of the tropes that is so popular at Halloween is this kind of spooky graveyard or haunted house. And what's a haunted house or a spooky graveyard without some spooky trees? So we're gonna make ourselves into a spooky tree. So my weight's on my right leg and my left leg's up, and you can do it that way or do it the opposite. Just know that's the way I'm doing it. And then I'm gonna pick up my leg and I'm gonna step back. Like I'm going to warrior two. Eventually I will make that a warrior two. So if you landed it in one step, awesome. But if not, just allow yourself to adjust. We want to keep this leg nice and steady, so we're not going to pull the hip around too much. We're going to work a little inner thigh action, and then we'll come back. Now this movement back and forth in Pilates is called the mermaid. And warrior two is named after, in Sanskrit anyway, this monster made out of Shiva's dreadlocks. So the way I figure it is if you take a dreadlock monster and a mermaid and put them together, you would probably get Medusa, right? A gorgon with the snake hair. So we're gonna try to make some snake hair with the arms, right? As we come back and forth. So as creative as you want to be. One more time, back and forth. And then we're going to take this into a kind of variation of the triangle. So we're going to marry the pyramid and the triangle together, and it's going to become a movement between the two. So now with the pyramid, usually I turn my back foot in more. So that's going to be the primary pivot, is what's happening with this back leg. So I'm going to take 2 blocks, Bring them up front. I'm gonna pivot my feet towards the front and fold in. And then I'm gonna pivot my back foot open and open up into triangle, okay? So the Halloween action of this is like we're closing that coffin lid. So we're gonna close the coffin lid, find that movement, and then creak our coffin lid back open with or without the sound effects. So closing the lid, folding in, opening the lid back up, finding that triangle shape. We're gonna do this one more time. Close the lid. Find your pyramid. Open the lid. I'm working on my coffin lid sounds. And then we're gonna take this whole thing. This leg is getting tired, but I'm gonna do one more pose. I'm gonna take this whole thing into a half moon balance. Oh. So big stretching out, full moon, and then we're gonna curl it in behind the sky, behind the clouds, and then extend it out. Howl with the moon. Curl in under the clouds, and then out. One more time. In and out. And then I'm gonna bring the foot down and lift up halfway and fold just for a minute, shake that out, and then come all the way to standing. I'm gonna keep shaking. And then notice, as you take a mountain pose, is there a difference between the two sides? For me, there's definitely a difference. Oh. Besides the fact that was fun, my right leg is way more warm and toasty than the left one. We don't want to leave the left leg out of all this toastiness. So let's start with our creepy tree. Spooky tree. Oh. In my case, creaky tree. Because my joints are creaky. See, as you get older, you get Halloween sound effects like that are built into just living life. It's exciting. Something to look forward to. Taking a couple more big breaths. Okay, I'm going to pick up this leg, and then we're going to step it back and find that warrior two shape with the legs. And then we can add our Gorgon, our Medusa shape to it. And I'm trying to get like a pretty fluid movement in my arms to the degree possible, given the circumstances. Okay, last one. And then we're going to find this kind of creaky combination between this pyramid and a triangle. So this guy is going to come into the half moon balance. So we'll take this right leg up. And again, if we can, we're going to stretch out like a big full moon and then curl up behind the clouds and then stretch it out and curl it in in behind the clouds, and then stretch it out. Curl in behind the clouds and stretch it out. We're going to bring that leg down, come up halfway, exhale, fold. You smelling that? Now we're going to come all the way up to standing. And find, this might be our last mountain pose, so finding that sense of equal standing and just see where it landed us. We're going to take a nice big breath and step wide out. Now you can turn the toes in, or you can turn the toes out slightly. We're going to do a squat. So that normally is kind of more of a 45. So that's where I'm going to start my pose. I'm just going to start myself where I want to be for the squat. And then folding in, it also gives me a little bit of permission to bend at the knees. So we can make this a little more spidery. Back and forth, or you can just hold the center line, which I kind of like to do a combination of those. So a little bit of a spidery half squat, and then a little in between wide angle forward bend. I'm going to do that one more time as a sequence. I invite you to join me, or you can do your thing. And come into our center point. I'm just going to lean back a little bit. It feels kind of nice. I'm not so far that I fall over, but that's why I've extended my arms out. We can really kind of lean into the legs. Okay, now we're going to come to a wide squat, and we're going to sort of evoke Kali Ma. So at this time of year in India, there's a festival called Diwali, and it is the festival celebrating the goddess, and really in all of her forms, but one of her forms is Kali and Durga. They're kind of similar. They have a lot of similarities. Different regions of India kind of have different, like one might favor one over the other, but in any case, Kali is pretty fierce. She's got a necklace of human skulls. She wears a skirt made out of severed legs and arms. In her many arms, several of them are holding severed heads, and others hold fierce-looking weapons. And so she looks really fierce. She's usually blue, and she often is depicted in this kind of squatting shape with her tongue hanging out. And she's got a long kind of snaky tongue. And so she seems really fearsome. But what the role of that goddess is like the avenging mother, and she cuts through all the bullshit and takes down those that would sort of have their, their foot on the throat of the downtrodden, right? So she equalizes things. So she's not a bad lady to call upon if there's injustice in the world. So we're going to call upon her with this pose. So we're going to come up and just, you can envision yourself in any way you want. But we're going to stick the tongue out. And then you can straighten out the legs. We're going to do it 3 times. Come down, stick the tongue out. Just try to be a fierce, avenging mother. That's all I'm saying. Come on down. You know how you protect your kids against everything. All right, so we're going to turn this into a downward dog. So you can spin it around. Now, you can skip the downward dog part if you like. So we're going to start with the Frankenplank on all fours. So Frankenplank on all fours, one leg and the opposite arm go up. Oh. And then the other side. Oh. 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 Now, Frankenplank number 2 is just the legs from a plank Oh. Oh. Frankenplank number 3, legs and arm. Oh. 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 Holding that steady is not easy. So you can do more of those if you want to, but oh. If you're like me, that was good. Give yourself a little wobble. Oh. And then we're going to bring ourselves to a seated position. Oh. So, you can sit in a way that has one knee high if you'd like. I'm just going to do this with a cross-legged sitting position. Sit up tall, rotate. I'm going to the left first because that's the leg that's always up front when I sit down in my habitual way. Now, as soon as I feel my right hip starting to lift, I just back off of the twist a little bit. If you have any kind of low back issues, it might be helpful to actually turn the hip a little bit with you. So you might just adjust so the pelvis kind of leans into the twist. It'll take some of the pressure out. You can also, again, just back off, right? So what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to kind of turn the head in this kind of creepy, slow Halloween kind of way. Leaving the spine where it is. I'm going to inhale one way and then exhale the other way. Right? And that's it, just the head moves. Now I think this is really fun, but it does look a little creepy. And I'm always curious too, like as I turn my head towards my right shoulder, which is kind of the one that holds tension and stress, it wants to lift up to find my head. So I'm just watching that inclination, trying to stay relaxed through that shoulder. So I'm going to take myself one more time, turning the head to the back, and then as I turn my head around front, I'm just going to leave that twist and then pause for a moment. So the last pose we're going to do is, or last pose sequence anyway, is just this. But while we're kind of letting the spine change, we can do little fire logs. So just folding forward. So we're kind of building a little bonfire here. So I put a block up front, but you can put your leg on top of the other. You just stack in your shins like fire logs in a fire, as it were. Okay, so I'm gonna take a nice big breath and come on up. And I was just kind of feeling for when my spine felt like it had kind of evened itself into the forward bend. Let's give everything a little bit of a shake. And then whatever you did last time for your twist is what you're gonna do this time. So I'm just putting my right leg up front, sitting up nice and tall, twisting until I feel that right hip starting to lift, and then just backing off a little bit. After a minute, sometimes I can twist a little more this way. But for now, I'm just twisting however much is the comfortable amount. And then again, I'm going to do this little head movement. And for me, there's just interesting things to notice. So like, even though my right shoulder's now in the back, as I turn my head towards it, I can feel the kind of muscle want to lift that shoulder blade up toward my head, and not so on the left. So it's clearly a connection between the muscles in the neck and the muscles in the shoulder. Just learn stuff about how your body is doing on a given day. one more of these. And again, like as I'm coming back to the front, I'm just gonna bring the whole thing around. And then I'm gonna do this little fire logs on this side. Coming up with a nice big inhale, unwinding. Now we're going to travel to the land of the dead so that we can do some shavasana, but of course we have to take the river Styx, the ferry over the river Styx. So that's what we're going to do now. So possibility number one for our ferry trip is to leave the feet on the floor, and then as we lean back to row, we've got this little kind of boat pose shape happening. Now, option two, one leg straightens out on the opposite side that we're rowing on. Option three, both legs come up and we extend the legs as we row. Picking the option that's right for you. One more time. If you believe yourself to be safely in the land of the dead, then all there is left to do is a little dead bug. Kind of get your sacrum down to the floor. And then when you're ready, a little corpse pose is the next thing. So, it's called corpse pose all year round, not just at Halloween when it seems most appropriate, but it's called corpse pose because we're kind of allowing a couple things to happen. One is we're allowing every ounce of muscular energy to pause, with the exception clearly of heart rate and other things that happen automatically without our conscious attention. But all of our conscious motor muscles we're trying to relax, right? Especially those that are really intimately connected with the parasympathetic nervous system. So really focusing on the face and the muscles along the scalp and sides of the head, and the throat, everything else as well. But really let yourself kind of check in. Are you carrying some habitual tension in your shoulders that you could put down? And we let the arms relax, maybe a little wider away from the body, wherever they need to land. Maybe bending at the elbows and resting your palms on your ribs or stomach would be better. Okay? But allowing the shoulders to relax. Let the jaw unwind and get softer. Let's see if your lips can get a little fluffier, more like pillows. Let the eyes themselves get heavy and deep in the sockets. And let your gaze, even though your eyes might be closed, let your countenance become kinder. Often we go out into the world with a mask on. The popular name for this is resting bitch face. But a lot of us use it. We kind of put on this kind of sternness to go out into the world with. And so we're letting that go too. And kindness can be a bit vulnerable, but it's worth it. palms of the hands and the soles of the feet completely relax. So we're just going to take a moment and notice the breath. Take a breath so deep you can feel it all the way to your toes, or as close as you can get, and then let it go with a sigh. And then start to wiggle. I like fingers and toes and wrist and ankles first. And then give your whole body a nice big stretch. Oh, and maybe curl up and give yourself a little hug and a back massage. Oh. All right, ghouls. When you're ready, you bring yourself to a seated position. And we're gonna take a nice big breath with each other. Nice big inhale. Big sigh. Welcome to the rest of your day. Namaste, ghouls.